Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. I am Devin Bedoni.
And I'm Uriel Eisen.
This is our concepts edition for the week where we go over conceptual, big picture thinking around small businesses and lean principles. You want to hit us with your quote?
Yes. Be so naive that you start and stubborn enough that you finish. I got it from John Vogel on Instagram.
Who's that?
Someone on Instagram. Thanks, John Vogel. Yeah, so that was that.
I like it a lot. I feel like I often talk to people who are interested in running their own businesses but are still working a job.
Yeah. Or
whatever, starting a project or even just undertaking a new project within a business. And it feels like this is a key marker of success. Is this like just enough naivete that you're willing to try? Like if you're too naive, you sink yourself. But if you're too aware, then you don't ever start anything.
I feel like a common theme when listening to interviews of people who do different startups and start projects of any kind is basically, if I knew now what I knew then, I would never have started.
Yeah. And
so there's power
have to be bullheaded enough to carry it through.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. I feel like in a very small sense, I experience that every time I try to design a new buckle. Is like the beginning is easy because you're like, oh, what if you made a buckle that functioned this way? Mm-hmm. And then it's like the devil's in the details with such a small, I mean, with everything. But with such a small thing, it's like, all right, now this webbing can't pass that plate when it slides to this position. So now we make it taller. Oh, now it's really tall. How do I make it? Yeah. Great quote. New Patreon member, AJ from Design the Everything. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Everyone else, head over to our Patreon, check it out. I added a lurker level, which is $1 a month. So that's $12 a year. If you get that much value, consider that.
And you get access to the reading list. Is that correct? At the lurker?
I haven't published it yet, but I have started it. So I wanted to go through it with you, and we can get that up there. Also, I was on Taps and Patience, AJ's podcast with a buddy.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. Some feedback he gave, which was nice, is, something that stuck with him from listening to this podcast was the ninth lean waist confusion. And he was talking about that in regards to...
I thought the ninth lean waist was utter chaos.
Leading to confusion.
So we have 10 now.
And anyway, so it stuck with him, so I thought I'd kind of mention it again.
Yeah.
And I think with all of these, I think it's been very helpful to me with like the 8 lean waists or the 9 lean waists.
Or 10.
The 8 lean waists, we talked about many episodes ago about a company who kind of came up with their own lean waists. So like, these are the waists we should be looking out for. I think all of that, all of the tools from like Eliyahu Goldratt around finding bottlenecks, like these are all lenses to evaluate things through, and they each sort of reveal something different. Yeah. And somehow changing lenses I find to be very helpful. Yeah. So like looking for, just starting to like bring into your awareness, like when do I feel confused? You can start to like just flag a lot of new issues. Mm-hmm. I feel like an ongoing problem I experience is just that we're good at becoming used to the way we do things. And then you do them that way and you never question it, or it's just hard to really step back and question it. So
I was talking with a listener friend, Nico, this last week, and he was kind of asking if I'd heard of the Elon algorithm, which I actually hadn't come across prior. And it's very lean adjacent. And we kind of had this discussion that like at this point, like since the industrial revolution, basically, that we've been kind of working on these types of systems. And it makes sense that at this point in history, a lot of these things are converging. Like,
oh, interesting.
That a lot of people and companies from all over the world are converging on what works. Like things tend to go in that direction. And so I think finding whatever lens kind of works for you effectively is what's important, not necessarily being a lean, guru or whatever. It's like, if you can package these principles, these core principles, in a way that is easy for you to put into your business or life, that's what counts at the end of the day. I think there are, the Toyota Kata book brings up the point that like Toyota is uniquely good at doing this over and over again, and for a long time effectively. So I think there's specific things maybe to be gleaned from them. And then also like a common thing I hear that is missing in many other systems, a common thing I hear across lots of people in all businesses is like the challenge of making time to improve. And I feel like that is another place where like Lean and Toyota specifically shine, is prioritizing those sorts of activities in a way that most of the other systems kind of are like, well, you'll just make that happen, or you'll just work harder, or like we'll do it in these big spurts, instead of being like, this is our core business function, sort of. Right. Is
improvement.
Yeah. And it is a little bit of a different lens, I feel like, than a lot of the other
interesting
approaches, like Eliot, like theory of constraints shares so much with lean principles, but that's not a piece of it. Like it is like work on your bottleneck, but it's not like improve all your systems. It's not like improving your systems is your core business function. It's making money is your core business function, and remove any bottlenecks that stop that from happening. The end result is similar, but
right. I think with Eliot Goldratt, it is a much better system for the model of hiring consultants, because you're going to see results much faster.
Yeah.
And so as a consultant, I think that's much more powerful.
Yeah.
And much more likely to stick. But yeah, I think it's easy to conflate, and I think this was frustrating to me or confusing to me at the beginning. It's easy to conflate pursuing or like mimicking Toyota with the things you're mimicking being the end goal. Because like Toyota spent years coming up with the things they write about, but they were never like, okay, now we found the answer. And they keep stating like the answer is continuous improvement and scientific thinking.
Yeah.
And then this is like, those two things are what led to the idea of Kanban, the idea of like Kaizen events, or and not the other way around. And so so I think it's like easy to start holding Toyota up as an example, but then pursuing the hallmarks of the Toyota production system rather than actually fundamentally building a culture of continuous improvement and like teaching scientific thinking. And when I mean teaching, I mean like also to yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Like for me, I like going through the A3 has been very interesting. And
I think it's less teaching and more like modeling.
Maybe that's it. Building a habit.
Encouraging. And like, it is a business, like straight up, like making time where people get paid to do a thing. Like whether you're teaching or not, like that is a fundamental difference.
I think giving people time that you're paying for to do something that is seemingly not business related. I mean, not immediately business related.
I think it has a big hurdle. Well, it's a hurdle also. Yeah. I think employees really notice. Like, I think that's notable as an employee. Like I have been working for myself for quite a while now, but I have been an employee in the past. And I'm just trying to think of like the moments when an employer like said like, you're on the clock, learn this thing, were notable. And like, I was like, oh, okay, this is a cool vibe,
Right. I think there's also like a level of respect you are showing to someone's whole brain and intelligence.
Yeah.
When you're just like, go learn or go solve problems that you see.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what problems do I don't know. Yeah. I think it's a shift.
Yeah.
Not to deplete our quote bank here. But I like this one. I came across, goals are for when you want to win something once. Systems are for when you want to win something repeatedly. And I feel like that's sort of the difference a little bit in like building a habit of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
And a culture of continuous improvement is like, if you set a goal for like, we want to produce this thing in 2 minutes faster, or we want to shave 10 seconds out of this process, like, you're likely to succeed at that, I would say.
Yeah.
But that is a much less powerful mechanism than building a practice of continuous improvement where everyone in an organization is looking at every process and has learned good systems of analysis and problem solving.
Yeah.
Anyway, so good quote. Anyway,
like it.
Yeah. So I have a couple sort of themes.
Yeah.
Topics. One is an interesting sort of pushback against lean. I don't know if that's a good phrasing, but which is basically that as an employee, you're asking people, including myself.
As an employee or an employer?
Everyone involved
yeah.
in a lean business is being asked to exert quite a bit more mental energy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of tends to increase retention because people like to, think and learn and all that.
I feel like an ongoing complaint of employees in general is being bored.
Yeah. So I think there's that. So this is a pushback is basically that you take a lot of sort of mindless tasks and you suddenly turn them into very mental energy intensive tasks by like, you should be analyzing this, coming up with recommendations of how to improve it all the time. And that people basically don't have mental energy when they leave the company and go home, and that like sometimes work should just be work. I was sort of thinking about this. I feel like you and me both have commented about listening to podcasts and listening to books. I feel like I used to do it a lot more at work.
Yeah.
And now I just like sort of can't because I'm too busy with my brain doing other things. I don't know if that has to do with this.
I think there's a happy medium. I think people in general like to get into that flow state.
Yeah.
And making sure that there are times in a person's working, life where they can just sort of enjoy that is pretty important.
Yeah.
And it's also hard as a self-employed, business owner, because we are used to just pushing. And it's hard not to expect your employees to do the same for the sake of the business. It's like a constant reminder, I think, to be like, you need to go home at night and not think about this.
Yeah.
Where was I going with that? Anyway, so I think you need to be able to strike a balance of letting them enjoy the like kind of mindless moments for what they are, and then give them enough challenge.
Yeah. And but I think that might also be I was trying to think about how to achieve that balance for myself too.
Yeah.
Where like a mindless task is nice sometimes, just to like take a break, bang through a bunch of stuff. We redid a deck recently. Yeah. And it was very pleasant.
Yeah.
And partly because the group I was working with has minimal knowledge and minimal interest in continuous improvement. And it's not like we're going to be redoing decks for the next 10 years. Yeah. And so like no one was interested in like, hey guys, how about if we try slightly different? Yeah. Like I made a few tweaks, but for the most part, it's just like, all right, let's just get this done.
Yeah. And
it was a nice break. And so I do feel like it's an and we've talked about this, it's an added project and an added, like, I don't know, thing to worry about, to constantly be thinking like, man, this process could be improved. Wow, this isn't value add. Oh, I'm over processing this. Like, I don't know.
It can be exhausting.
Yeah. At the same time, you don't want to take a mindless task to be like a reprieve, because that mindless task might have a lot of waste in it. Right. So like we had this with eliminating our shipping area. I think it's made both assembling orders and shipping orders less like flow state. Because you're now like the total sequence of the tasks you need to do before you loop back
more complex
is longer and more complex. And I think that will be improved over time, where we eliminate, like, there's a lot of sort of back and forth, wasted motion, awkward steps that are like 5 mouse clicks, and you have to read and think, and instead of just like automating that with a button that you just click and it moves, you know.
Yeah. Anyway,
so I think that flow state can sometimes mask waste, because there's so much muscle memory, it's fast. And so I don't know, it was interesting. So we were talking about it a little yesterday.
Yeah.
In the company, me and Sam.
Interesting.
Basically, yeah. There needs to be a balance.
Yeah. I think we're too far to the other side right now.
You and I, or
no, in my business.
To the other side of
not, well, maybe not myself personally, but as an organization, not doing quite enough analysis on systems. We're still very much in like a just getting stuff done sort of firefighting state.
That must be why your revenue is so good.
It's not good enough for it to justify.
Yeah.
Also, we're in a major period of flux, so that's a part of it as well. But
right.
Just generally speaking, I think we are more on the flow state side of things
than the constant disruption of how can we make this slightly better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle maybe is a sweet spot.
Probably.
Yeah.
Joe from Cobra Frame Building has been posting a lot about post edits.
Yeah, we had a good phone conversation the other day.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Made me think hard about all the manual stuff I'm doing as a hurdle for product improvements in terms of tool paths.
Yeah.
And then also launching new products. I think like I end up posting a lot of code. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely high on my list. And I feel like the time you've taken to get that workflow, I was just curious how that's been. Because you did a lot of work on your posts. And I feel like a week or two ago, you were like, I now post code direct.
Yeah. 100% worth it. Definitely.
Nice.
It was a long process. It's ongoing too, which is kind of cool. We'll see if they cut me off at some point, but basically I keep coming up with little tweaks, partly due to what Joe was doing. And then someone reached out about, I'm blanking on who it was. My apologies. Someone reached out on Instagram about there being like options for custom drilling cycles.
Oh, fascinating.
So it sounds like we're going to be able to make it so that whole backboring routine that I did, it sounds like we'll be able to make that a custom drilling cycle where I can just like pick a point and then it will call that.
Whoa.
That like.
And have the right parameters right in the dialog box.
Yeah. And effectively be my own canned cycle that I've come up with.
That's very cool.
That is cool. That's probably not, at least right now with like everything going on, it's not something I could tackle on my own. And I like applaud Joe for having done that. Basically I think he sat down for a weekend and got it done and did it all himself, which is awesome.
That's
not there yet.
It's an interesting I don't know, I feel like that is adjacent to the like in-house versus out of house.
It is. Yeah.
Because on like you have leveraged other people who are very good at what they do to be good at what they do.
Yeah.
But you don't have the ability in-house.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
And so you've probably moved faster than you would have. Definitely. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I think so. Yeah. To where we got to.
Right.
Yeah.
But then on an ongoing basis, it's less powerful.
It is. It's a I think it's.
But this is why you need to make friends. I think that we'll all be calling Joe now.
Yeah. Anyway, the long story short, yes, 100% worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I came up with which we'll cover next episode, but a crappy but effective workaround is I was doing a lot of edits to the end of all the programs that ran in Gripper programs. Yeah. So I just put it all as a block at the end in a manual pass-through or NC pass-through.
Yeah.
And then
you delete comes after.
Everything after works perfectly.
Great.
Yeah. A lot less hand editing, a lot less room for error.
Yeah. And it's just a rinse and repeat block.
Yeah, so now every program that's going to live in an ecosystem of Gripper automation just has it right there. So every time I post, it's in there.
I like it.
Not as good as a post-processor edit, so
sure.
I definitely want to crack into that. But
yeah, which should be a pretty straightforward edit, I would think. You could probably have a dialog box toggle that's just like M30, M99 kind of
This is something I have really been thinking hard about lately. Is how to make working to standards more prevalent in the shop. I don't really do changeovers on the CNC anymore.
Yeah.
Very frequently. I just did a few yesterday, and I referred to the setup sheets that I had written weeks and weeks ago on some new parts because I just didn't remember which gripper fingers do these use, which, all that stuff. And it was super nice. But what I realized is I was super diligent about just picking up the document. What is the next step? Read it off, go do it, read it off. And most of the functions in the shop don't work that way. And so the way that relates to our, the post and dialog boxes, my concern is one of the things is, does it end with an M30 or M99?
Yeah. Which
is just like a G code, whatever thing. And that's really important. Right? But I could have...
It's not really a whatever thing. Actually, it is kind of a whatever thing.
I'm saying the specifics aren't important for people who aren't into CNCing.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's very critical. It would be one tiny little checkbox. How do you make sure that every time you go through and do all the steps?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to become just click through it super quick and then become habituated because most of the stuff I output ends with an M99.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was thinking of maybe I could use a manual NC to write to a macro or write something that then the post looks at to decide.
Yeah.
So then everything, anyway, I don't know. It's complicated.
It is complicated. I've been dealing with a lot of this as well.
Because you output to 2 types of machines, right?
3, sort of.
And that you have to select the right things in your post?
Yeah.
How has that been?
I make mistakes. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I've been thinking through this exact same thing. There's we've streamlined a lot of this process and there's still so much work to do. Came across an issue yesterday where right now for our setup sheets, I post out the code. I copy and paste the tool list block from the top of the code into our setup sheet. Mm-hmm. It turns out that the way the post was written, if there's 2 tools with the same number, it just picks the first one and does an alarm, at least the one I'm using.
Okay.
So then the person setting up the machine has no way of double checking that. So
I'm not quite understanding.
So let's say I had 2 drills of different sizes and I had them both named tool. This happens to be what had happened. They were both tool 18. The tool list, just whichever one it came to first was tool 18 in the list.
Yeah.
And it just omitted the other one completely.
Instead of saying hey, you have 2 tool 18s.
Yeah. And so then we ran the part and there was a tiny hole for this huge tap.
Oh, did it crash?
No, I mean it
just stalled out or something?
Stalled. Yeah.
Wow. And I guess for non-machinists, so it's funny. I was just talking to Kyle, who I've mentioned on here, yesterday about lean, and he was giving me some feedback on this podcast.
Yeah.
He's not from a production manufacturing background, and it was funny. like a lot of these same principles apply to office work
Yeah.
and email. Like what you're talking about here
It's
sounds
all
very
data
esoteric.
No, yeah, it's just data management.
Data management, and there's so much wasted time in like bad handoffs of
double checking. This is kind of what I like. I feel like we've gotten a lot of these systems to like a 90%.
Yeah.
Where like if you do your job perfectly, it's like super smooth and quick. And if you make one error, there's all of these cascading errors that come from that.
Interesting.
And so really like building out the system to be incredibly robust and error proof is, I think, in the phase that we're at right now. I mean, let's see. We're probably not at 90%. In reality, we're probably at like 20%.
Well, maybe you're at 90% and now you have 90% left.
Exactly. Yeah, the 90-90 rule. Yeah. But yeah, these types of things, it's like, and I think we're in this kind of like, I don't want to say dangerous is not the right word, but we're in this sort of like awkward teenager phase where we're starting to rely on standardized systems, but not all of the systems are standardized.
That is exactly my fear.
Yeah.
With a lot of the big improvements on the mill.
Yeah. And it sort of feels like you're getting on a boat and you have one foot on the dock and one foot on the boat, and the boat's kind of like going out to sea and doing the splits.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this, like the answer from Shigeo Shingo is standardize our gripper finger length.
Yeah.
And then you never have to go into the tool table and punch in a new length.
Right.
Now you've broken the habit of every time you put a new tool in the CNC, you update the length.
Right.
So where do you land? Like obviously efficiency wise, you should standardize. And then
you also put in a safety check.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels so risky with so little gain. That said, we rarely change tools except the gripper.
What's risky? You have to have having a safety check is risky.
What is a safety check? You mean like I put in a new gripper and then I go visually
whatever it was. It could be in the machine. It could be a pokey yoke. Like you could literally have a thing where you change gripper fingers in a fixture that doesn't allow fingers to be too long.
But I'm just saying, when you like building in the muscle memory of like anytime I'm reaching into that tool changer and changing something,
yeah,
I then go into the tool table and update the length.
Uh-huh.
And if the second you break that golden rule, I just feel like you're asking for trouble.
Oh,
that's my fear.
You are, but I feel like that's sort of what we're talking about, is this awkward teenager phase where you have to build new systems that error proof.
Right. One thing I think I mentioned was, you can write in the post, you can make it check the offsets in the program and compare them to the tool table. That is something I really want to do.
Yeah, as simple as that sound, it sounds like a big lift to me without a presetter.
No, I mean, if the table for tool 1, it says the length is 6 inches.
Yeah.
And then your H value on the...
Yeah, no, but that means that your tools have to be set perfectly.
Oh, you could probably build in a tolerance.
Sure.
And then maybe you get an error.
If you're hand setting your tools.
True. Yeah. All right.
What's the key principle there, though? Not to get so like we're not just being CNC geeks. It's like,
it is very nice to build efficient systems and reduce waste.
Yes.
Sometimes as you do that, your automation is hard, I think, is what we're coming to, right?
Yeah.
Like automating this program outputs a perfect document that this other program can read with no human ever checking it is awesome until there's some deviation that wasn't accounted for in the way the program was written. And so it doesn't throw an alarm. It just blows up your very expensive machine or sends an email to an important client where it says like, dear first name, like that. Like that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome that it auto populates until it doesn't, or until someone types in the wrong thing, or until like you automate getting all the first name, last name stuff off of LinkedIn and populating the email and stuff, and no one's checking it, and it works 99% of the time.
Yeah, I guess that's the core principle, is automation is amazing, and automation requires lots of error proofing and safety checks across all, not just Like it's obvious when you're like running parts on a machine, but seems less critical when you're populating a tool table.
Now, I will say Toyota has written a good deal about this.
Yeah.
And like this is still an outstanding question in my mind.
Yeah.
There's a few mentions. I'm rereading the Toyota production system by Ono. And there's a few times where he says like the fundamentals of the Toyota production system are this, this, and this. And then somewhere else in the book, it'll say like different things. So I kind of want to go compile all of them and compare them. But in one of them, it's like automation.
Yeah.
Or automation with a human touch.
Yeah.
And people, I think, is the other pillar.
Yeah.
And automation is basically a machine that knows when to stop.
Yeah. And
that is a huge emphasis at Toyota for a very good reason, which is creating defects is hugely problematic.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like speed is less of an emphasis as just like, will this process stop itself?
Yeah.
And that can be auto-generating emails. If there's any doubt, it stops instead of just like blasting through 10,000 and you go like, okay, it missed 5, but like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the broader principle is automation, I think, is often missed. I think about this with like DIY automation, like we both have done. I think if you look at how our CNCs are built, that's automation that someone else built.
Yeah.
There's a lot more sensors for things being out of ordinary.
Yeah.
And on ours, it's kind of like, that's
our systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I very quickly built in a standard safety check.
Right. But like you can buy the vices we both run with jaw position sensing.
Sure.
And I would have prevented a crash if I had that. But it just seems hard to spend that kind of money, which touches on something you said last week, I think, which is that when people tried to build a cheap DIY system, they go too cheap.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't deliver.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
That said, this really has delivered. I have one last piece, I think, getting into the specifics. So this is sort of a deep dive on production spikes and production leveling.
I was thinking about this week as well.
And really actually giving a concrete example.
Yeah.
Instead of just generally, it's good to production level. So what I was thinking about in our shop is it is very appealing with the level of production we need to achieve per week to sort of go like, okay, let's give ourselves, because task switching is hard, let's give ourselves a full day to do this project.
Yep.
And then we'll just do production tomorrow. And then instead of doing some production today and some of that project and some production tomorrow and finish up the project. So I was sort of thinking through realistically, like, what would that mean? Could we do that in our shop where we'd run production 3 days a week and do 2 days a week of other like R&D stuff? And what I realized in our very, very small way is it would drive inventory hugely at every stage, because suddenly, specifically with pins for us, if instead of 50 buckles a day, we're suddenly saying we're going to do 100 a day, now we need our Kanban levels to account for 100 pieces to be used all at once.
Yeah.
And so now instead of keeping 50 pins and then trigger, or 50 and then another block of 50, we need maybe 100 pins because it needs to carry us through a much bigger spike without running out.
Yeah.
And now when we go to make the pins to replenish that, now we need to make a ton of pins, which means we need to go to our stockpile and pull enough titanium bars to make 100 pins instead of knowing that we'll always have enough to just make 50.
Yeah.
And so now our inventory of titanium bars needs to be nearly double the size. And that sounds like, for us, this is why I say in our very small way, for us, that's not very consequential.
Yeah.
But just imagining producing thousands of cars.
Yeah. Or iPhone.
Like, it's millions of dollars across your supply chain, I bet.
Yeah.
Like, you can't double, right? And so, but this also has to do with like matching takt time, which I think is interesting. Like, people focus on cycle time versus takt time, which is basically if you produce a lot of, so for us, if we produce a lot of pins on day 1, a lot of buckle bodies on day 2, and a lot of buckle cams on day 3, instead of producing all of them every single day, the result is the same as non-production. We've now spiked our production, which means all upstream processes have a jerk effect. And the way they talk about it is like cracking a bullwhip. Like a small action at the base of a bullwhip results in like the tip of it breaking the sound barrier,
right?
Which is the sound you're hearing.
Yeah.
So like that's very real as you move up your supply chain. So I don't know. I just thought it was like, and yes, the money isn't a big deal for us, but the space in our very small shop is a big deal, especially as we add new products.
Well, and probably the time is maybe the bigger, like all of a sudden you're dealing with how to arrange large blocks of time into an 8-hour workday, which like I feel like classically people are like big blocks of time are easier to deal with. I think as a human, it's easier to get into something and sort of do it for a while.
Yeah.
So a big block of time is nice for a person. But when it comes to being able to like manage many, many, many different processes, big blocks are really sort of challenging if you're trying to fit, if you're trying to fit 2 6-hour blocks into an 8-hour day, that doesn't work, right? And if you can stop one of them halfway, that's fine. But if not, you're kind of hosed and you end up having to push one to the next day.
Right.
Or figure out a different way to deal with it. So I think there's a scheduling challenge that really gets exacerbated by these large blocks.
Interesting. It makes me think of like fitting sand into like a glass bottle instead of fitting like rocks.
Yeah, basically.
Right?
Yeah.
Like volumetrically, you can fit a lot more sand into than larger rocks.
It's just a change over time.
That's the thing. So like we've had very bad success with larger renovation projects being like done piecemeal over a week.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like we used to, what we would do is like we recently built a staircase, and having learned our lesson from previous experiences, instead what we used to do is come in, okay, we're going to start building the staircase, but we may as well have the CNC running. So we're going to go warm that up. Right. Then we're going to go do a changeover.
Yeah.
Inevitably you're doing half and half.
Yeah.
And so that day we were just like, nope, CNC stays off.
Yeah.
We're just building this thing, and we just banged it out in a day and it's done.
Yeah,
So
we're doing the same thing today. Actually, we're shutting down production for a day to try and wrap up new shop build out.
Yeah.
Because it's just been kind of dragging a little bit. And I've been like halfway in programming shop running mode and halfway in like electrical code diagnosis.
Right.
And so yesterday I went and helped for half a day, and I was like, you know what? I think if all 3 of us were here tomorrow, we could just finish this, and then we could go back to running our shop.
Yeah.
So this is opposite of what we were just saying, but some
well, I think this is why it's a struggle.
Don't meld well. Yeah.
They don't meld well, and it's just like it's really hard to do a little bit over a long period of time, and then you get into the single piece flow from an organizational perspective is real. Where like doing a lot of things in parallel where none of them are wrapping up.
Yeah.
You're not benefiting from any of them yet.
Exactly.
And so I think this is where this is all sort of a bit of a confusing mess of contradictory concepts.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Good luck.
Yeah, basically.
Have fun.
It's on that conclusive note.
Yes. Inconclusively conclusive.
Something.
Thank you all for listening. You can find me on the internet at likenprecision.com, on the Instagram at liken_MFG.
And you can find me at austeremfg.com and austere_manufacturing on Instagram. And the podcast is at Incremental CI on Instagram. Also, we have a Patreon.
Patronize us. In a good way.
And we will be back on Friday.